Welcome back to Overbooked. I'm Amanda, and if you made a New Year's resolution this year to read more, I think you came to the right place. Today we're going to talk about how to achieve your goal of reading more in 2022 and just some tips and advice on how you can accomplish that. I know it might sound odd coming from somebody who has a YouTube channel that is dedicated to books and reading. I have a separate Instagram dedicated to the books I read and following other people who read books. But reading can be hard, especially if you're somebody who does not read regularly right now, or as your goal states, you're trying to read more. This could be a very big challenge. And I want you to know that it is. It is hard. Sometimes reading is hard for me. Sometimes it's hard to pick up the book, finish the book, and, stick to your goals. It's hard. So I hope some of these tips and advice will help you in your reading journey this year, and hopefully your reading journey forever. Tip number 1, find what you enjoy to read. This might seem very basic, but finding what you enjoy to read will really help you accomplish your goal of reading more books. If you're not reading a book that you actually enjoy reading or are having a good time, then you're gonna put it down and you're not gonna finish that book. You're not gonna read more. Don't try to read what you think you're supposed to be reading. Read what other people are telling you to read. If you don't wanna read it, then don't read it. It's that simple. If you don't want to read Dune, don't read Dune, okay? It's fine. You don't have to read Dune. I feel like everyone thinks they have to read Dune. You don't have to, okay? If you want to read Dune, that's perfect. And if that's the book that you think that you're going to enjoy, please read Dune. It's amazing. Well, I actually haven't read it, but it's amazing that you want to read something. Woo! I know it can be hard to get caught up in trying to meet some expectation that is out there online. I do it myself, and I have to remind myself that just because all these other people are reading this book doesn't mean you have to. And if no one else is reading the book that you're reading, it doesn't matter. As long as you enjoy it, as long as you are getting happiness from it, you're enjoying it, and you finish it. Because that's what we need to do for our goal, is to read more, is to finish books. That's your task. First things first, find what you enjoy to read. And once you figure out what you like to read, and you really just focus on those books, you'll find other things that you'll like to read. It just is what is the word? It just keeps expanding, okay? But you gotta start somewhere. Starting with something that you actually like to read will just really help kickstart this goal. Tip number 2, carve out time for you to read. I know we're all busy, and that's probably the biggest excuse for people who say they don't read a lot because they don't have time. And I get it. We are all very busy. I'm busy, you're busy. So carve out some time. Find a time that works best for you to read. Don't try to read during a time where you know you're not focused, you know you're not relaxed, you know that you're gonna get distracted, or that you just are not gonna be able to commit to reading. Just carve out some time. If that's 20 minutes before you go to bed, or it's right when you wake up, or it's over your lunch break, or if it's whenever, it doesn't matter. Just carving out some time really lets you focus on reading and really gets you meeting your goal, reading more. And anything counts, really. If it's 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, you read something, and that got you towards finishing your book. That's it. Going along with this, fitting in reading when you can is really crucial. I've found that that's actually when I get the most reading done. I started this habit of when I'm working out or running or going for walks, instead of listening to music, I listen to my audiobooks, which is not for everybody. So don't think that this is where you can fit in your reading. If it works for you, it works, but if it doesn't, don't do it. But this really works for me. So when I'm running, over my lunch break, I just start my audiobook, and I get 20 to 30 minutes done a day just listening to my audiobook while I run. It's something I'm gonna do anyways. It's something that I can do on top of the activity I'm already doing, and it just really helps get through a book, helps me set aside time for my reading. There's also the advice that you could do is take a book wherever you go, which I think is really helpful. If you go to the doctor, bring a book with you. When you go to the doctor, you're gonna have to wait in that waiting room for at least 20 to 30 minutes. So instead of looking at your phone, you can always take out your book. If that's not a place that you think that you would actually comprehend or enjoy reading, then don't do it. But that's just another example of where you could try to fit in reading wherever you can. Tip 3, set small goals. So your goal already is to read more, right? So how can you achieve that? I think that setting smaller goals to achieve a bigger goal really helps. So setting smaller goals like I want to read one book this month can really, really help. It allows you not to try to get overwhelmed with your overall goal, but instead focus on this one smaller goal that you set up. Maybe your goal is to read 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. Maybe your goal is to read one chapter today, or 50 pages this week, or something like that. I think really setting up smaller goals helps you really envision and see yourself reading more and getting to that overall reading more goal. I really think that these small goals are really helpful, and I think you'll be surprised at how much you actually read with these smaller goals. For example, last year I read Anna Karenina, and this is a very long book. This is a very big chunk of a book. Wouldn't recommend. Would not recommend. I took all year to read this book. I really did, honestly. But when I really wanted to get serious and start taking it serious and start reading, I think I was around page 300. Everyone, turn to page 300. Here we are. This is how much I had left when I wanted to start reading this book seriously. And that was around October. I told myself that all I needed to do was read 20 pages a day. And that's what I put in my planner every day until December, is I would read 20 pages every single day. Did I read it every day? No. But for the most part, I would read 20 pages a day. Probably 4 to 5 days I would do that. And I finished it in 3 months. And this was not a book that I wanted to finish quickly. I knew that it was going to take some time. And I would shock myself at how quickly I was getting through the book by just reading 20 pages a day. It really sped it up. I'm not even kidding you. It flew by. Well, not really, because this book really dragged ass. But it felt like I was flying through the book when I looked back. And I was like, oh wow, I'm already on page whatever. Didn't see that coming. Small goals really help you accomplish bigger ones. So that is something that I definitely recommend. Tip number 4. And I think this is probably one of the most helpful ones out of this whole bunch. I think they're all helpful, but I think this one is really helpful. Read with your friends or join a book club. I think that doing something with a friend keeps you accountable. It makes you push yourself, or makes you realize that you do have to read this book because somebody else is relying on you to read it. Or joining a book club allows you to think oh, I really want to read this book, so I can talk about it with this book club. You don't have to join a book club, but I think finding a friend who also wants to read more or who already reads. If you have people around you that already like reading, perfect. Reach out, be like, hey, what should I read? Or what are you reading right now? Or could we read a book together and then talk about it? It's such a great way to keep yourself accountable and have fun reading. It's so much more fun to read a book and then talk about it with other people than it is just to read by yourself, which is fun, honestly. I think that is really enjoyable. But if there's somebody who is really wanting to try to get into reading, I think that joining a book club or reading with a friend really helps get motivated and have fun with it. It really allows you to have fun and think more about the book that you're reading. Because I've always found that the books that I read with friends or the books that I read in book clubs, I get so much more out of. And I think more deeply about the book that I'm reading, because I have to think about the conversations I'm going to have, the questions that are going to be brought up, my questions about the book, and then you'll hear all these other different perspectives on the book other than your own. Somebody might have a completely different perspective from you, and it's going to be just make you think of the book completely different. And it's just so much more fun. It's really fun. I can't drive it home enough. It's fun. There's a lot of great online book clubs out there, so if you don't want to join one in person, there's so many options for you. I'll put some down below. I think I've talked about them all the time. There's Book of Sens, and this is a book club that focuses on reading more women of color, mainly women of color in the Caribbean area. Or there's a Stacks book club that's put on by Tracy from the Stacks podcast, and she reads varying amounts of different genres and books. And there's also the new nonfiction book club said by Jess, and you can join her Discord and do that. I've actually just joined that because one of my goals this year is to read more nonfiction. That's a great way to interact with an online community, and you don't have to show up in person, and you don't even really have to show up to the book club if you don't want to. I really like doing the Stacks book club because she has a podcast episode, so I'll read the book and then I'll listen to the podcast episode, and I feel like I'm already in that conversation and discussing with people. Of course, Book of Sends and the Stacks have a virtual link that you can join. I think the Stacks, you have to be a Patreon member to join, but I think the Book of Sends, if you just sign up for her newsletter, you get the link to the book club. So I definitely recommend checking those out. You could also just start your own book club. I've done that. Or you can join in-person book clubs. Just look around. A lot of libraries will have book clubs, coffee shops, or there is the Girly Book Club, which is now the Gloss book or something. And then they have chapters all over. Lastly, what I want to say is I think it's very important to remember to not compare your reading to other people. I think I kind of touched on this in the beginning. It's really hard when you come onto YouTube, BookTube, or Instagram, Bookstagram, and see all of these content creators reading so many books. There are some people that I follow on Instagram and YouTube that read like 200 books this year. Do not compare yourself. You are not in the same boat. You are not trying to achieve the same thing. So do not get down on yourself if you're not reading 1 million books next year or this year because that's what you wanted to do. 2 books, 5 books, or one number more than the book that you read last year is enough to meet your goal. If your goal is to read more and you only read 1 more book than you did last year, that's still more books. And the whole point of reading is to expand your knowledge, expand your world, and have fun. It's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be enjoyable, and so that's what you're trying to do. And don't try to get caught up in comparing yourself or the number game or whatever it is. This is something that I honestly get really caught up in, especially as one of those content creators. I am like always trying to compare myself to those around me. And this year is one of the reasons why I stopped doing the Goodreads goal of like, how many books do you want to read this year? Is because I know I'm gonna read more. Like I know I already read. I have a habit of reading. So I'm not gonna set a huge number goal for myself to feel pressure to meet that goal. So just know that if you get caught up, you're not the only one. All those people that you see online are also getting caught up in it. And we all have to remind ourselves that it's not a big deal and that we like reading and that's why we're doing it. And lastly, just have fun. Have fun. I hope you have fun reading. I hope you find a group of friends who also loves reading and you guys can talk about your books, even if you're not reading the same ones. And I hope that this is a habit that you can create for yourself and that you read more and you achieve your goal of reading more in 2022 or whatever year this is and you're going through the archives of YouTube. And that's what reading is. It's a habit. It's a great habit to pick up. I think when I really got started into reading, it was something that I just kind of like had to pick up steam with. It was like, I really, like, as you can see through like my year review of reading on Goodreads, like I read more every year after year. It's because I just learned more on how to like fit in reading when I can, what books I like reading. And so that allows me to read more books and find more books that I enjoy. So remember that it's not like, it is something that you have to work on, but it also should be fun. So don't forget that too. I hope these were helpful. I hope that these tips help you, and I hope that you read a lot of great books in 2022. And in the comments below, let me know what tips or advice that you think you're going to use, or what advice you think that should be added for those who are watching this and are really trying to read more. While you're here and you're trying to read more, let me know in the comments below what you're reading right now, or if you're somebody who reads, leave a suggestion down below as what somebody should check out. What book should people be reading? I don't know, throw it out there. Maybe that'll be some inspiration for somebody who's watching. I'd love to see that. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. And if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you have not already, what's stopping you? It's so easy, just click it. It's a red button, it's right over there, subscribe. Again, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.